So Laura and I met a few years ago when I was working at Takeda Oncology, and it was an awareness day, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. It was the ALK Positive Awareness Day, and I got a phone call from a group of people, of which one of them was Laura, offering feedback. And everything that she said was completely on target and also very uncomfortable to hear, because we had not done great by the patient community and the disease community on that day. So that started a series of conversations, and in one of them, Laura said to me, I have 2 goals for the rest of my life. Number 1 is that my children have independent memories of me, that they don't need to ask their father about me after I'm gone. And number 2 is that I contribute as much as I possibly can to the lung cancer community. And I said, I can't help you with number 1, but I'm on Team Laura for number 2. So even after I left Takeda, here we are. So this is really Laura's story, and we're gonna start with that. In particular, patients really struggle through the diagnostic journey sometimes, and sometimes it's really easy, and sometimes it's very mixed. So we'll start from that moment.
Yes, thanks, Gabrielle. I'm already tearing up. Anyway, most people who are diagnosed with lung cancer have a little tickle in their throat, something that indicates to them that something isn't right. I had none of those things. I found out that I had lung cancer via a freak car accident with a woman who was driving along the wrong side of the road, almost hitting me and my then 6-year-old son head on. Due to the nature of those injuries, we walked away from the accident, but being a lawyer, I was like, well, I need to get checked out. And my son had some concussion-related injuries, so he too was checked out. And after I was wheeled out of the CT room, a few minutes later, a doctor came in and said, well, we don't see anything related to that car accident, but you might want to get that mass checked out in your lung. I go, what are you talking about? And the doctor immediately underplayed it. She said, well, you're 40 years old. And I said, yeah, isn't that the new 30? That's what people kept telling me. They said, and I go, did you have any symptoms? No. In fact, I went skiing yesterday, finally got that baby weight off. Any weight loss? No. I am up from the holidays because I was diagnosed in February. And no shortness of breath, no coughing, no family history, no risk factors. In short, no reason whatsoever to believe that I had cancer. Fortunately for me, I had this car accident, and it gave me concussive-like symptoms. And it's for that reason I actually did follow up with my doctor about the concussion that I had. And it just so happens that I said, well, they also said there was some sort of nodule or mass in my lungs, and that maybe I just needed to have that followed up with. And the doctor said, actually, they never sent me the report, but let me get that CT report and I'll get back to you. But it's probably nothing because you're not a smoker, you have no risk factors. And I said, yeah, right. And all my family lives into their 90, they go insane, but they actually live a long life. So, long story short, later that day, she called me with clear concern in her voice and said, you didn't mention that the mass in your lungs was actually 3.75 centimeters. And then she spouts off all sorts of information that I have no idea what it means, but I'm writing it down. And I'm in disbelief because I buy what our government and society has been telling us, right? You have to smoke to get lung cancer, and if you don't smoke, lung cancer is one that you can cross off that worry list. But I go to the computer and I do exactly what you shouldn't do. I go to the computer immediately and put in all these terms that my doctor says, and lo and behold, despite the fact that I felt great, despite the fact that I had no risk factors, there still was probably an 80% chance that the mass in my lung was cancerous. Long story short, obviously it was cancerous, and it was diagnosed as stage 3. I underwent concurrent chemotherapy and radiation. There's some fun pictures of me and all the wigs that I wore when I lost my hair. I had part of my lung removed. Yeah, the pink one was the favorite. My sons did not like the pink one, but all of their little girlfriends did like it, so I wore it. And then I had my lung removed and still more chemotherapy. But the good news is that in the midst of all this, the tumor was genetically tested, and it tested positive for a fusion called ALK. And I had no idea what that meant, but the doctor was like, this is great news. This is the best mutation to have. Not that you can use it right now, Laura, because we're still trying to cure you, but if it comes back, this will be great for you. The side effects are far better than the chemotherapy we're about to give you. Great, I thought. Unfortunately for me, the cancer returned in 2016. But I immediately started a new drug called alectinib, or Alecensa, and I've been on it since October 2016. And it worked wonders. It has reduced the tumors in my body by 75% for 2.5 years. There, unfortunately, are signs that it stopped working. One of the pictures you see here is me in front of a stereotactic radiation machine that zapped 1 or 2 of the brain mets that I have developed. But I feel great, and as Gabrielle said, I've really made it my mission to spread the word about lung cancer and patient empowerment, because I believe that patients have to be informed and educated about their disease in order to maximize their life.
One of the things that we've talked about a lot is shared decision making. So oftentimes, especially in oncology, but probably in other areas too, the doctors know or think they know way more than the patients, and so they make decisions independent of patient opinion or patient input. So part of what the empowerment is trying to find ways to access information and make information accessible to patients so that they can come to the table as an equal partner. One of the things that Laura and I worked on together was a decision tree tool based on the NCCN guidelines, but people always say, oh, well, just give the patient the NCCN guidelines. I don't know if you've ever looked at them. They're 116 pages long for lung cancer. They're written not in any language that I speak. I don't speak that many, but still not in any language that I speak that I can understand. And so we were really working on translating that into language that patients could use to understand what path could I, should I, might I take. Social media plays a huge role in this. So Laura, talk a little bit, after you consulted Dr. Google on that first day, how has social media been a part of your journey and a part of your education process?
Social media, bar none, has been the most helpful aspect of my lung cancer journey. It's been more helpful, frankly, than my doctor, who is the preeminent expert on my type of lung cancer in the world, Alice Shaw, for those. Anyway, how is it so useful? Well, almost immediately after I was diagnosed, certainly with ALK, I found a group of like-minded patients and caregivers through Facebook who also have ALK. And we would share everything from treatment history to side effects, discussing the clinical trials that were ongoing, whether they were working or not. I knew, for example, that the drug that was the best choice for me, alectinib, that drug happened to not be FDA approved as a first-line treatment when my lung cancer returned and metastasized to my brain. But I knew from the experiences of others who were in the clinical trial called ALEX that it worked wonderfully in the brain. And in fact, the day I found out that the cancer had come back in my brain, I said, I need positive stories of alectinib working. And I got 30 or 40 stories saying, I had 30 brain mets, now I have none. And it went over and over like that. So that's the kind of feedback, the almost instantaneous feedback that you can get and patients are currently getting on social media, that they're not waiting to see their doctor to get that experience. And frankly, they won't get that amount of feedback from their doctor, because in most cases, their doctor may have seen a relatively few number of patients like them. And certainly that's the case with ALK, which is 5% of non-small lung cancer. Most doctors might have 1 or 2 patients total that they've seen that have my disease. Even my doctor, who that's basically all she does is ALK and ROS1. She specializes in that. She doesn't have as many patients as are on the Facebook sites that I frequent.
Some of the things that I've learned from you over the last few years about this is, we all, our legal departments and our corporate communications departments do a lot to manage the information flow out to the world. Through the social media, oftentimes patients know before the regular public knows. Because if you're in a clinical trial and that clinical trial has been ended, but it hasn't been announced that it's been ended because not all the PIs have been informed, the patients are posting about it. So this is one of the things when we think about patient centricity, is to engage those stakeholders in legal compliance and communications to say, you may think you're managing the flow, but in this day and age with the kind of porousness that social media brings us, kind of hard to really be in control of the message all the time.
Absolutely. I mean, there's an example, I won't name the company, of a drug that was in phase 1 clinical trials for ALK. And we knew people who were going on the trial, first in human clinical trial, and they were failing. And, we probably only knew 3 or 4 of the people that were on that phase 1, but every single one of them progressed and ultimately died. So we knew months before it was reported at ASCO or World Lung, whichever it was reported at ultimately, that this drug wasn't working. And we counseled other people who were thinking about it, don't do it because it's not working. And that's so important. As a pharmaceutical, the industry needs to understand is that patients can make you or break you. This is already happening. Like, we are already sharing information. We may be sharing incomplete information, right? Because we're only basing this on a small subset of people who are engaged in these groups, and that's certainly not everybody. So there is a risk that we have an incomplete understanding of what's going on, which makes it even more important for the industry to engage patients and be as transparent as possible. It drives me nuts when I go to an ASCO or a World Lung Cancer Conference and someone in the audience will ask a question regarding something that's reported, and the presenter will say, we do have that data, but we can't tell you right now because that's going to be presented at World Lung at the next conference or whatever. No, that's not being patient-centric. Withholding information that you know, just so you can burnish someone else's CV or get the biggest bang for your buck for stockholder earning reports or whatever, that's not appropriate. If you have that data and it's appropriately vetted, please share it. Don't tease us with the information just because. And it's obviously not just the pharmaceutical industry that's guilty of this. The academic researchers are also guilty, the big organizations, ASCO, et cetera, they want to be relevant, so they put these embargoes on there, but it's not being patient-centric.
So it's easy to imagine, and in fact, I was at an advisory board in the US where a physician said, I don't understand what's happening with the patient community, with the ALK-positive patient community. Patients are coming to me and telling me what therapy they want to be on. I've never seen this before. How do they know what to ask for? I think that's, given everything you've shared, that's easy to imagine why a patient might have an opinion on what therapy. Talk to us a little bit about payers. What is the role that patients can play with payers and in that part of the conversation?
Well, that's a huge issue, obviously, internationally. We have members internationally in some of these groups, and not all these drugs are approved in different countries. For instance, the lectinib, which I'm on, is not it's not approved as first line in a lot of countries throughout the world, even though the studies have showed that hands down it's better than the then current standard of care, crizotinib. And patients have to become engaged with the payers. They have to become engaged with their physicians and demand better. They're becoming very educated. I co-author a journal or a newsletter that comes out every month, as I think I mentioned yesterday, called the ALK Fusion Reporter, that lists every scientific reported article or abstract in that within a time period related to ALK. And this is geared towards patients. Patients are reading this. They're reading it. They're bringing the information to their doctor, and hopefully that's making them a more educated patient and making a more informed decision with their care.
So Laura is very humble and wouldn't tell you that she's had multiple posters at ASCO and at World Lung. She also wouldn't tell you that as a patient opinion leader, she was able to pass, how much was it for the bill?
Oh, it did not ultimately pass.
But it did pass in the House, which I still think is a major accomplishment.
Yeah, so
you see her picture up there
at
the House.
Right, we, as a part of another group, Life and Breath group that I also am involved with, we, are absolutely appalled by the lack of lung cancer research funding at the federal level and worldwide in comparison to its death toll. As you probably know, lung cancer is the #1 cancer killer by far, dwarfing all other cancers. It's the #2 killer after heart disease in the United States. Yet it receives only about 5 or 6% of all federal cancer research funding. So we tried to change that, and we found just by pushing for it, we were able to move up by $6 million specific lung cancer research. Now it passed the House, it got taken away by the Senate, so it didn't happen. But I also am proud of another initiative. I spearheaded an initiative for a bunch of ALK patients, just patients and caregivers, fundraised $600,000 and funded 3 grants for ALK lung cancer research in the space of less than a year. Not only did we just fund those grants, we actually were partners with the Scientific Advisory Board to select the applications that went forward, because not every grant application really meets the needs of a lung cancer patient, and we wanted to make sure that our money and our voice was heard.
In our last minute or so, any questions from the audience for Laura? Please.
Hi, and thanks for sharing your story. Very inspiring and very moving. And I think a couple of quick points. The first being, there's been a lot of talk of how to use technology in the industry, a lot of it on the commercial side, and I think what will be interesting to see is how that technology is used to improve the patient's experience, especially pre-diagnosis, because in your case, you did say it was diagnosed by accident, literally. But I think, I have seen disease areas where patients are seeing caregivers over a number of years, and the disease is not picked up. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how the industry puts together some technology muscle to try and help with that. But also just getting your perspective on how to work with industry in that particular area, because I think that's where there's a lot of frustration in not being diagnosed early enough.
Right. That's huge in lung cancer, particularly my type of lung cancer. Most people are diagnosed at stage 4. I mean, it literally took a car accident for me to be diagnosed. There's no way I would ever have been diagnosed earlier. There is a huge need to have more specific information everywhere. In the United States, it would be like a WebMD. It needs to be in a way that is digestible by the actual patient. I mean, I'm a very sophisticated person, I'm not gonna deny that, but I was very overwhelmed when I first was diagnosed. There's only so much that when you feel like something's going wrong, there's only so much you can take in at once. And you need to remember that not everyone, most people are not going to be able to dive right in initially. They need stuff in small, digestible bites.
Any other last questions? So one of the things, did I miss a hand?
No.
Thank you.
It's hard to see up here.
One of the things that we end up talking about a lot is how do we collectively break down the silos across companies, across patient advocacy groups, across disease areas to mobilize more to serve the needs of individual patients, but also groups of patients. So can you say a little bit about just in your closing words, a little bit about your view on how it is that you could imagine a world where there is more collaboration across people who now consider themselves potentially competitors or at odds with each other, organizationally, not personally?
I mean, that would be every patient's dream. If all truly I've been sitting here and we're talking about getting all the stakeholders together. That's really a pipe dream. All the stakeholders together to me means all the industry, all the pharmaceutical people, companies that are in a certain space getting together. They're getting together with the academic researchers. They're getting together with the people on the ground treating these patients. And the patients and the lung cancer advocacy groups are also there. I mean, it truly means everybody. Why not throw in a pay or two, right? Let's get everyone in the same room together and break away the barriers of it can't be done to yes, it can be done. Because I believe that anything can be done if you set your mind to it.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. As always, thank you for sharing your story and your insights and the learnings that you've had and enriching our conversation.
Thank you for inviting me. And
Always.
everyone should go skydiving.
Yay.